So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this travel-focused webinar on customer data and loyalty. Creating brand loyalists starts with a great digital experience. My name is Dan Darnell. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Product here at Bayno. See my contact information here. If you have questions about the content or would like to learn more, feel free to reach out to me. I can definitely point you in the right direction. Today we're going to start off looking at some key issues for travel brands, and then I'll talk about a prescription for travel brands to drive loyalty through a better understanding of customers that allows them to drive a seamless personal experience. It wasn't that long ago that travelers actually went to a travel agent to book their travel experience. This had a couple advantages. Travel agents had access to a wide variety of brands. They knew the travel packages, they knew the airlines, they knew their schedules, so they could really help you figure out what you wanted. They also had another critical advantage. They knew the traveler themselves. So when you went to your local travel agent, they had probably seen you before, or with a quick conversation, they could quickly understand exactly what you were trying to achieve. So they knew your intent. If you were looking for a trip to Hawaii, they could easily zoom in on, I can see it's you traveling with your wife. These are the options. Here's what you need. And I think one of the things we've lost is that sense of understanding people's intent and the intimacy that comes with a truly personal experience dealing with the travel agent. So we know what happened afterwards. The internet came along, and it introduced us to a whole new way of booking travel and engaging with discovering places to go. In that the OTAs, or the online travel agencies, these online-only firms came along with new technologies and techniques. We saw great advances. We saw meta search, where people could go and search across brands. We saw bidding introduced, allowing us to bid down prices. But the result was customers became much more savvy, but they also became much more price sensitive, and they became less brand loyal. As if we needed more evidence that consumer behavior had changed in the travel industry, this 2013 information from Deloitte highlights the issue, with very low percentages of travelers loyal to any one hotel or airline brand. And loyalty programs are not quite having the impact that we hoped. So people aren't spending as much money as we would think with their number one or most preferred brand. This is interesting. What can we do about it, really? Let's take a look at one of the things that's driving our inability to really connect with consumers, and that's customer data silos. Travel companies have a mind-boggling amount of data, but few, if any, truly maximize the potential of the data at their disposal. Well, why is that? Across travel brands, we see that you have somewhere between 3 to 6 or more customer databases. That means you have multiple systems that contain portions of the story about each customer, from, for example, reservation, travel management systems, marketing systems, loyalty systems, and more. This clearly leaves you with a fragmented view of the customer. It makes it nearly impossible to understand them in a way that will let you create a meaningful dialogue. This fragmentation is only being increased by the consumer's use of new devices like smartphones and tablets. In addition, most of the data you have is being stored in these different systems that are not online. So you have no way to bring it to bear on these digital experiences that you need to transform. Think back to the travel agent quickly. They were better able to serve their customer because they knew him or her, or they could have a quick conversation with them. We need to look for ways for travel companies to get to that same level of understanding of what people are trying to do online, to give us that same connection with the traveler that can truly drive not only higher bookings and a larger revenue, more revenue per traveler, but create brand loyalty to those brands that make this investment. So my prescription, 1, take control of your customer data. Make sure you own it, and make sure you're the one you're in control of that aggregation of data. 2, use that data to find ways to leapfrog your internet-only competitors. They may have meta search, but you can have a better customer experience or personalization. And finally, in everything you do, I know many travel brands already think this way, which is we want to put the customer at the center of our experience. They think of that in terms of, on the airline flight or in the hotel. What we're actually suggesting is expand that viewpoint and think of this from the digital experience to the physical experience and back to the digital experience again. Put the customer at the center of that entire travel experience. Part of the solution is a smart online customer data hub. An online data hub allows you to connect and collect online data, no surprise there. I can take things like clickstream behavior from people on my website or people using my mobile apps, and I can bring that into the online data hub. But what's also cool about this is I can bring offline data. I can bring data from booking systems where maybe I didn't have that available to my website. I can bring data from back-end systems, and I can basically onboard that into an online or a cloud-based environment. A smart online data hub. Well, there's 3 words there. Smart is a key operator, which is you're going to have so much data in this data store. One of the things it has to be able to do is use big data and machine learning techniques to comb through that data and find meaningful patterns of information. And one of the things that's really useful coming out of this is understanding an individual's preferences. What do they prefer? Understanding what segments they're a member of, and actually getting to a much more granular, behaviorally based set of segments. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example profile to better understand the kind of data we might have in our smart online data hub. So first, and probably most obviously, we have online data. What probably isn't obvious is the smart data component of this. So you look at all of this clickstream data, understanding from that clickstream data what this person was really interested in means that you need to put the machine to work looking at the search terms that the person entered when they were online and looking at where did they spend their time. What destinations did they spend the most time on? What travel package? What type of room? What hotel did they spend the most time on? There's a lot of data here. So combing through all that data and figuring out where they really spent the time is actually a machine learning challenge. And that gives us some really smart nuggets of data that we can really utilize. Second, purchase data is an obvious thing. So the stays or trips they already booked. We know that, for example, this traveler has recently had a couple of stays at a hotel, 4 nights in Denver, 2 nights in Salt Lake. Great, that tells me something about them. But we could also merge that with data we got from the experience itself. We know that she, for example, purchased room service items. So if we're phasing out room service in some of our hotels, those hotels, she may or may not like that aspect of it. The other thing is that we know she actually paid for a spa treatment. So if we have a spa that's associated with one of the hotels that we might have on offer, that may be a better hotel for her, for example. But ultimately, again, we're going to have a lot of data. We need to be able to comb through that and figure out, well, what among that data that we just saw are actually this person's preferences. And so, again, we use machine learning, go through the data we have, and figure out, hey, you know what, when she's staying in a place, she's actually looking for hotels that have a business center and have, high-speed Wi-Fi. She never books the room with the 2 double beds, never. So why are we even showing it to her? Why not? We know she always books a king room. Let's book the king room. We also know, if you're a multi-brand site, what brands does she tend to engage with? There may be, maybe it's not the luxury brand, or maybe it is, or maybe it's a mid-tier brand, or maybe it's a low-end brand. Just understanding what those brand preferences are, or whether she likes high, mid, or low in terms of preferences can have a huge impact on what you show to her. And finally, there's information you already have in some of these back-end systems. Loyalty status, points, attributes from the loyalty program, demographic information. If you know she's a high-end member of your loyalty program and has tons of points, that should definitely influence the kinds of, for example, promotions that you show to her. You might allow her to redeem points within the hotel for certain services, for example. Another interesting thing about a smart online data hub is because it's smart, one of the things that makes it smart is it can actually bring together data across the consumer's devices. So it creates a profile, a seamless profile across their smartphone, their tablet, and multiple desktop devices so that all that data is brought into one profile. And the beauty of that is you can use that data not only across those devices, but you can use that in any of your touch points as well. Let's take a look at some of the really interesting use cases. One, probably the most obvious, is pick up where you left off, but not just, for example, in the browser you were in, but on another device. A classic use case might be, hey, I was talking with my wife last night, we were talking about our vacation, we sat on the couch, we looked at the tablet, we were passing it back and forth, looking at destinations, but then we just kind of ran out of time and we didn't book anything. The next day I'm at work and I'm on my work computer, right? As it is today, I would have to go back to the site and try and remember what we looked at and try and find that destination and see if I can find the options that she and I were discussing. Ideally, what should happen is I go in on the work computer and it says, oh, I actually recognize you, and these were the 3 options that you spent the most time on last night. Would you like to re-engage with one of those? That would be hugely helpful. Another obvious kind of use case for this is business travelers. So people who have booked an experience and may want to rebook that again. Now they actually have access to those experiences across devices. So if I booked my last time on my work computer, I booked my last trip, and now I go home and I need to book that business trip again for next week, I actually have access to my recent trips, and I can just kind of rebook again from that list. Again, all of the touch points, not just the customer's devices, but all of your touch points have access to this same data. So if we really know more about the customer, we know what they've been looking at, and then they pick up the phone and call the call center because they want to book the trip through the call center after doing some research, suddenly all of the information from that that they've been researching online is right there in front of the call center agent. Let's look at an example, hotel booking example, of how we might personalize the experience or deliver a more relevant experience to consumers based on this data that we have about them. We're going to take a look at 3 profiles: a business traveler, a couple traveling on leisure travel, and a family. And they have some different dimensions. You'll notice that we have our first one traveling from San Francisco. She's an elite traveler, so we probably have tons of data on her. We have a retired couple. They're traveling for leisure, and we know they're in a senior segment because maybe they applied for, when they were searching, they looked for senior discounts, for example. Well, that's going to indicate to us that they're in a senior segment. And we can use, interestingly enough, we can use that online data that they entered as they were searching. That can easily become part of their profile and tell us what segment they belong to. We also might know it's a leisure trip because they booked it for, let's say, 10 days in New York, right? So not only do we know they're senior, but we know it's leisure. And finally, we have a family, but we don't know anything about them. We've never seen them before, but they came to the site. They have 4 people, and we know they're traveling with kids, right? And we know it's a leisure trip. Maybe it's a 2-week trip to New York. Okay, so within each one of these, what are the key attributes? There's tons of data here, right? So one of the things that in every project like this that we do and have done, we do a dimensional reduction and really look at all of the various elements we could capture. In this situation, one of the things we've noticed, obviously destination is really important. Where you're going and what you tell me about exactly where you want to be is really, really important in terms of what we show. Whether you're traveling with children, of course, is important because if you're traveling, I know I have kids. If I'm traveling with my kids, obviously I'm going to want a different type of room or I'm going to need more than one room. Whether it's business or leisure, we already talked about that. And then finally, if I know your loyalty segment, I can use that information to potentially say, hey, you could upgrade this room for X amount of loyalty points. So you can see a lot of value coming in from these points. But those aren't the only ones. Tons of additional data can influence what you show, and we'll actually pull in a couple of these in the following examples. So Jen Jones, she's a frequent traveler. She travels out to New York from San Francisco 4 times a year. She's in our elite program. She's elite in our loyalty program. So what might I show her? Well, if I know where she stayed last time, then maybe showing her that same hotel would make the most sense. And if there are other business-friendly hotels around that area, those might also be good alternatives. So this is the way we could create a more relevant result for her based on past purchases. If she suddenly changes her preferences, let's say she goes in and says, you know, I kind of want to narrow my search to, let's say, the meatpacking district, because I heard that's really an up-and-coming area and has lots of great restaurants, right? We can use, again, her preferences. We know what kinds of hotels and what kinds of services she prefers to order that list appropriately and show her the most relevant hotel on top. Second, we have Bob Wilson. He's traveling with his wife for the first time. We've never seen him go to New York. We don't have any prior booking history for him in New York, but we have seen him before, so we do know a little bit about him. We've seen him on the website. He's registered, for example. Okay? So given that, we're actually looking at his segment or people like him and what kinds of things have they found useful. And so what do we notice? Well, they're probably looking for hotels that are close to attractions. They're not going to want to go on a train, for example, to get to downtown. So maybe something right in Times Square is appropriate. We also know that this segment is less likely to want a premium hotel. They're going to want something in the mid-range of hotels. So these are good alternatives. We can maybe slightly upsell, for example, with the second alternative. And finally, we have our family that's coming in anonymously. Well, what do we know about them? We know it's a family. We know they're coming from Europe to New York because they entered that information, for example, as they were searching. If we knew that information, we might very much change the kinds of results we rendered. For example, hey, I'll show you an option maybe in New York. It's a little more expensive, but it's a suite. So I know it's appropriate for a family. But then I also know that people coming in from Europe are more likely, for example, to take a trip, be willing to take a train. And so I might show you some options that are outside the city. So you might have to take a train in to go to the sites, to see the sites in New York, but the cost is much lower. This is what Baynote does for our customers. We help you create a seamless personal experience across devices and touch points. And that means for your individual traveler on their devices, but also for you as a travel brand, creating really relevant, meaningful experiences on your website, on your mobile site, mobile apps, but also for other digital touch points or digitally enabled touch points like agents in the call center, people at the front desk, ticketing agents, or kiosks. All those digitally enabled touch points can use Baynote's technology to deliver a more relevant, meaningful experience. And we do this for a number of brands you know. And we do this in kind of a unique and meaningful way in that we allow you to either do this self-service. If you have an optimization team who you would like to have the tools that they need to deliver a better experience, we have that. But we can also help you and use our experience to do it as a managed service. So either way that you need it. We're also somewhat unique in that we have a truly smart online data hub where we can aggregate this data, but we also have a real-time experience engine that allows us to take that data, model on that data, and put that data into each of these touch points. And we've been around the block and worked with a number of brands in the travel industry, so we know what works, and we can help you with best practice implementations, support, and optimization. Our product is Baynote One. I encourage you to go to the website to learn more about the product. It's a very exciting big data product for travel that supports a number of different use cases. And I'd also encourage you to go to the travel areas of the site and learn more about specific solutions for the travel industry. And there's some interesting content here, infographics, and different solution briefs which you may be interested in. I want to thank you for joining us today. Again, my name's Dan Darnell. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. Have a great day.